person beside you.
We'd like to welcome you to the Kankakee School District 111 Candidates Forum. We are, again, trying to educate our voters who's going to go out on Tuesday, April 2nd, and vote for the respective candidate for our school board. Earlier, in the automatic form with the 3 candidates from the 4th and 2nd Ward, for those who was in attendance and was keenly listening, echoed the importance of school districts, and particularly Kankakee School District 111, which I think is the flagship of all school districts in Kankakee County, Illinois. With that, those elected on Tuesday, April 2nd, have a major task in keeping moving forward District 111 and their mission as candidates and respective board members. Our panel for the evening is Paulette Crank, who is a member of our Kankakee County Education Chair, Mr. Giuliani of the Kankakee Journal, and Kankakee President of the Kankakee Teachers Union, Ms. Beth Anderson. We want to thank them for taking time out of their schedule. And our 7 candidates who will be representing those individuals and the students and staff of District 111. Our timer for the evening is none other than Mr. Jess Gathern, who is the guy that will be posting the various signs to our candidates as we keep them on task regarding their 2-minute opening and closing statements, and your 1-minute response to the various questions that will be received from the panel and also from our respective members of the audience. Again, 2 minutes opening and closing statements, questions and answer period with questions submitted in writing by our audience, screened by our panel consists of our media or our panel and other community representatives. The question must be addressed equally to all candidates and be selected on the basis of its appropriateness, fairness, and general interest. Each candidate, again, will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Again, the moderator has the final authority in all matters of time limits. So with that, Mr. Bernard, we're going to start with you. And again, we want to thank the Kankakee Public Library for, again, for offering the venue with this event. Mr. Bernard.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Roy Bernard, and I have lived in District 111 nearly 30 years. One reason I decided to run for the school board is because I've seen our school district from several perspectives: as a parent, substitute teacher, community college instructor, reporter, and taxpayer. At Kankakee Community College, I taught fundamentals of writing, which is a requirement for students who did not score high enough to go to English 1. I taught that course for more than 7 years, and I saw firsthand the struggles students face when trying to meet their college requirements. I would like to see fewer students have to face these challenges. And being a substitute teacher in the Kankakee schools, I gained an insight as to what teachers face every day. The challenges are many, ranging from discipline matters to complying with additional state, federal, and district mandates. As a reporter for 25 years, I covered local governments and school districts. With that background, I've learned how to read and understand budgets and audits. For the past 6 years, I have worked with developmentally disabled adults, teaching them work and life skills. In that job, you have to show tremendous patience, but also be able to provide encouragement and praise, especially when they achieve a new skill. And that's the same type of philosophy I hope to instill into the students of our schools. Let's find the good in our children, praise them for their specific accomplishments and what it can mean for their future development. I am married to my wife, Ann, and we have 2 daughters, Madeline and Grace, who started in kindergarten at Taft and graduated Kankakee High School as Illinois State Scholars. I appreciate this opportunity to share my thoughts and visions for our schools.
Good evening. My name is Chris Boland. I'm currently a member of the Kankakee School District 111 Board. I was appointed in April of last year. Initially, I want to thank the NAACP, and I'll do this again later, but you have become the primary educator of voters in this community, and I appreciate that role that you've assumed and taken on, and I know it's a lot of work. One might ask, why would a person my age, with my children having successfully graduated from District 111, and my wife, Rosemary Pistorius, having worked in the school district for 25 years as a parent involvement person and as a teacher, why now would I want to be on the school board? And the answer to that is, I've spent 24 years in this working with the city of Kankakee, and what I was aware of throughout that time was that the schools are the critical part of a community. They're what attract people to the community or detract people from the community. So it's critical that we have schools that function. It's also critical, however, that the public understand what's happening in the schools. And in our community, we have one of the most negative perceptions that we could possibly have of our school district. And it's not correct. It's a wrong perception. But as a member, a person who's been active in the community since 1977, in working on the park board and various other boards, my job is not only to help set policy for the school district, but my job is also to communicate with others about the good parts of our school district. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah Johnston. Not many people know me by that name. They know me by Coach Jay. I have been in this community all my life. I grew up in Kankakee. Matter of fact, I never moved off of the street that I live on now. I went through the school system. I graduated from Eastridge in 1971, went to Illinois State University, and then came back here in 78, 79, and started subbing and coaching, and then had a full-time job. As you can tell, I'm homegrown. I could have left at any time. I did not want to. I love this community. I'm impacted with this community. I have dealt with countless students, athletes on all levels, and it's wonderful to see just what they do with their lives after they leave this district. Those are the students that we really want to focus on and work with. We have issues in the district. I know we do. Case in point, whatever happened last night, I understand that was a tragedy. Also, we've had some issues at the high school that needs to be rectified. We need to make sure that we are all working together as a union and as a faculty, staff, and administrators of the district to make sure that those issues are taken care of and dealt with accordingly. As I said, we have a great faculty, staff, administration that should be proud and is proud of what we are trying to do, and I want to be a part of that. We've done some really good things, especially at the high school with the construction, and I would just love to be a part of what I think I started back in 1960, I think, when I started school. I would like to see that through.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, buenas noches, bonne nuit. My name is Patricia, also known as Patricia Santoyo Marin, and I am seeking your support for candidacy for the privilege of serving our local school board. I would like to thank the Kankakee Public Library, as well as our local NAACP chapter, and all the volunteers and active citizens, and my colleagues up at this table for participating in tonight's conversations. A little bit about me and why I am interested in pursuing this privilege is that this is not my first time pursuing candidacy. I am an advocate for education, and I'll talk a little bit briefly about that. I myself am a product of public education. I learned English through bilingual education. I attended public schools from K through 12, and then also as undergrad and graduate degrees. I believe in the success that public education systems can provide for all of our students. It was via those networking and sponsorships and mentorships and bridges within public education systems that have allowed me to create a career of serving for over 17 years in supporting educational pipelines for students of all backgrounds. While I did begin my experience in serving a community that is of my background, I have learned that we all have common denominators in needs. And I have now experienced providing services for not only students and families that share the commonality in background, but also other students from different marginalized, underrepresented communities, as well as students of first-generation college-going and women students, and students that are high-achieving as well. I currently serve as an academic advisor for transfer students at Kankakee Community College, and as a result of that, I am able to see every single day the needs that our students have in preparing for post-secondary education.
Good evening. Michelle Obama once said, "You have to stay in school. You have to. You have to go to college. You have to get your degree." Because that's one thing people can take away from you, and that is your education, and it is worth the investment. And that is something I would like to instill into our students' mindset. As many students in today's age disregard school thinking it is pointless and useless. That includes myself 4 years ago in high school. I went from being in the high honor roll to almost failing my senior year, thinking that college and education was not worth it. It was just a piece of paper. As someone who has experienced this, I know what kids go through. I know what the struggle is in today's age. And it's easier to say what it feels like to experience it rather than to say what it feels like to witness it. And that's something I would love to instill in the mindsets of our kids, letting them know that school is important. Because as a student, I know what it feels like to have the world against you. I know what it feels like to have nobody think they're on your side. And as an adult, I know what it feels like to know that education is very important and that you won't get anywhere in life. And I would love to be the bridge of communication between the students, parents, teachers, and the community. And it's time for us to get a new leader from the younger generation, and I would love to be that leader if I am allowed to. Thank you.
Ms. Wells.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Wells, and I'm currently serving on the Board of Education, and I have been on this board for 14 years, for which I thank you all as the Kankakee community for giving me that privilege. Today, we're here to talk about what we would do as board members. I'm here to tell you that the board member of any board is a part of a team, and that team has to work together with the administrative team of the school district in order to get things accomplished. No one person drives the direction of the district. With that being said, I want to say that I think that I have spent the 14 years that I've had on this board listening to this community and doing my best to help set goals for the district and change the direction of the district. In the last 5 years, we have done major renovation and reconstitution of the district and of the curriculum that we present to our students. While District 111 is not perfect, and nor are the people that work for it, and nor are the people that serve on the board, everyone is working as hard as they can to make this district be what it should be for our children. And our superintendent of schools has focused on our number one priority, which is to be student-centered in our decision-making and making data-driven decisions as opposed to decisions that please this constituency or that constituency. So this is a team effort, and the people that come before you have to prove that they are willing to be a team player and work with the people that are there and with the superintendent that we have hired to continue to move in a positive direction. I look forward to speaking about that further as we go on.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Williams. I'm formerly known as Lynn James. I'm a product of this district. I graduated in '96. I have subbed in the district. I worked at Impact. I worked at junior high, went to SALT, and ultimately I worked 10 years at the Kankakee High School. Then I moved on to Kankakee Community College. I am a parent of 2 students in the district, one in elementary and one in high school. I volunteered for years in this district. I've also sponsored a group called Sister Circle out of the high school for 6 years. I also sponsored a STEP team out of that high school where we did community service. They've gone to do help at the Salvation Army. I've taken them to different college fairs and things like that and tried to provide a mentorship for those young ladies. I've also coached various dance teams and cheer teams throughout the community, as well as for Eastside and Kankakee Colts. When I was in high school, I was the class president. I was also captain of the cheer team and track team, so I was a student athlete. I'm very dedicated to this community, and I've worked 17 years in education, and I want to continue to see that me foster and help out any way that I can. So the reason why I'm here is to help the students, the community, the parents, as well as Kankakee staff. I also am now the coordinator of student life at Kankakee Community College, where I continue to do this work. I've seen students that are products of Kankakee District come to the college, and I saw in areas where they struggled. So I want to be able to help those students be better prepared for secondary education, and I want to continue that by being a voice on this board. Thank you.
Our panel, Ms. Crank, and you have the first question. The question is to Mr. Boland.
What motivates you to want to become a school board member?
When I applied to be appointed to the board, what I told the board members who were making that decision was that I truly wanted to be the biggest cheerleader for District 111 that anybody's ever seen. That's because I believe in what's happening in District 111, which is major changes in curriculum, a focus on the individual student and individualized learning, and I'm moving towards a response to individual students with trauma-based response. What's happening there is critical in order to turn the perception and the reality of the school district around. And it's happening. We are at a tipping point. I believe in this next 12 months, we're at a tipping point that will make a huge difference. And what's happening is the freshmen are involved in competency-based education right now. Next year, the next freshman class will be involved, as will the sophomores. The response we're getting from teachers involved and the students involved is very strong. But I think that what I want to be is I want to see a school district that functions for its students.
I feel that this district is heading in a strong direction, and a really strong direction. I've seen it firsthand from the classroom, from the sports fields, working with the faculty and staff at Kankakee High School, the administrators, and I want to continue being a part of that. As I said, I was a member of this district as far as employed by them for the last 40 years. I retired last year. I don't want to give it up. I love the district so much that I want to continue to be a part of it. Hardest thing is get up in the morning and knowing that I'm not going to work anymore. Don't get me wrong, it's fun, but I really want to be a part of it. I miss the kids, I miss the faculty, I miss the staff, and I see what direction we are going, and I want to continue that. The work that we've done at the high school is absolutely incredible. It's beautiful. I want to see that continue. I want to be a part of how that progresses as the year goes on, and when we get the whole thing taken care of. Our athletic teams are all incredible now. They're starting to be known in the state, and also our drama music department, second to none.
For me, I feel that it's a sense of responsibility. I feel that I have received so many privileges and opportunities based on my education. And having worked within the education system, fostering, again, what we call, some of us educators call the academic pipeline, making sure that we're strengthening that pipeline and supporting initiatives and supporting administrators and advocating for students and supporting the teachers and the administration as well. That is a sense of responsibility I have. I would not be sitting here for a second time if I didn't continue to feel that sense of responsibility. I've been granted opportunities to also serve and volunteer for our school district and continue to volunteer outside of the school district to ensure that our youth are in the best position they can to thrive, not only to graduate, but to thrive, so that once they graduate high school, they are best prepared to either continue their education at a 2-year, at a 4-year school. Perhaps if they wish to start their own business, they can do that, and they have the tools to be successful in that, or in whatever they want to pursue after high school. I want to make sure that they can come back to Kankakee and make Kankakee the great place that I can envision it to be.
So the main reason I want to run for school board is because I know what it feels like to recently graduate from high school. I know what it feels like to walk the halls. I know what it feels like to, again, be in the high honor rolls as well as almost fail school. I know the ups and downs. I know what these kids are experiencing, not only because I recently graduated, but because I have friends and family members still attending our school district. I would love to be their voice. I would love to create programs that will assist them and have things that I didn't have the support that at times I feel I didn't have. And I believe it is very important not only to improve the education of our kids, but as well improve the image of our school. Our high school, not just our high school, our school district has so many wonderful programs, so many intelligent students, but yet it's always bashed upon on the community due to the school violence, the fighting, the arguments, and that's not the case. Thank you.
Would you read the question again, please?
Sure. What motivates you to want to be a school board member?
Well, I would like to continue the work that I've started. I tell the staff whenever I have an opportunity to speak to them that we are actually living my dream. When I got on the board, I remember seeing a student here in the library, and she was studying, and the book that she had was so torn up and dilapidated, and it was for a biology class, an AP class. And I just could not believe the materials that we were giving our students to study with. And at that time, we had just hired a new superintendent for the first time in 14 years. By the time we hired Dr. Walters and she evaluated our curriculum, we hadn't bought curriculum materials since we had hired Dr. Ali, and that was nearly 10 years by the time she came to us. So our school district had been stagnant. We have gotten it restarted and moving in a very positive direction, and I want to continue the work that we've started.
The reason I want to run for school board is because I have a strong sense of dedication and service to this community. I want to be a voice for our younger parents, and I want to be an advocate for students as well as staff. And the best way to do that is to lead by example. So therefore, I decided that instead of me hoping that someone else will arise to the occasion and bring a different perspective, I decided that I want to be that voice, and I would do it myself. So with my years of service in this community, I wanted to continue to give back in the best possible way that I can.
Excuse me. There's one more. Thank you. what motivated me to run is just I want to have the ability to help the children in this community, you know, from the beginning, from the preschools all the way into the high school. There's certain things that we need to do, hopefully follow certain standards and give them the skills that they need. You can start first with any type of encouragement that they need, praise that they need. These are the type of things that I think would help them in the earliest stages and continue on. One of the things, too, is we have to have parental support in these things, though. I mean, if you're going to do this, I remember well when the children were first starting, you know, my children were first starting in schools, there was plenty of parents there for many a time at the beginning of grades, but then it started to slough up later on in the 5th and 6th grades and later on. And that was a little bit disappointing. So we need to try to motivate and have people understand the importance of education and what we can do for our children. I think there's a key to what's going to happen in this community. We have to start with our children from the beginning and move it up and see how much we can do to develop them. Thank you very much.
David, you have a question to Ms. Johnston.
Yes, obviously across the country, superintendent can be a short-term job, and elections often change superintendent positions around the country. Can I ask each one of you, if you are elected, are you going to support and keep the current superintendent?
Loaded question. As of right now, I see no reason not to. She has taken on an incredible task of changing this district and moving in the proper direction, and I would like to be a part of her committee to be able to see just how far we can go with it. She appears to know exactly what she's doing. She is visible, probably more visible than any of the superintendents that I've worked with, and I have worked with a lot of them. She was at the high school quite a bit. I would like, as I said, I would like to be a part of her community to keep this going. She is also one of the few people here that spent all of her time at this district. Real quickly, one of the things that she said in one of our pre-meetings at the beginning of the year, she asked all of the people in the audience, all the teachers, to stand up who had graduated from Kankakee, Eastridge, Westview, or the high school, and you wouldn't believe how many of our faculty and staff stood up, and it gave me chills because you just don't realize it until you actually see that happening. And again, I've never had anyone do that to give us that sense of being here and being able to work with them.
So if your question is, would my one vote be for or dismissing our current superintendent, it would currently be no. I would support our current superintendent in implementing the best practices that we see now. I think what I can support further in is, with my experience also having some shared leadership within school systems, is to make sure that those great best practices and that theory is implemented in the best possible way so that the teachers can also feel empowered, so that the students are in the best possible way to receive those best practices. And so what I can support is in making sure that we have a system whereby best practices are implemented equitably, and so that everyone in that process is successful, retained, and specifically the students are thriving as well.
So currently, as of right now, I have not met Dr. Walters. I've only heard her speak in the auditorium when I was in high school, and hear her speak on videos and just in general when the Daily Journal writes about her. So I fully support her at the moment. I believe she has the school's best interest in mind. So my vote would be no to not voting her out. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to question the actions she makes. There are policies that she is making that I strongly disagree with, but that doesn't mean that she should be voted out. And at any moment, if she ever does something that is against the school's best interest, would not mean that I won't hesitate to vote her out. Thank you.
Okay, would you read the question again?
Do you support keeping the superintendent?
Okay. I wholeheartedly support our superintendent of schools. When Dr. Walters came to District 111, as I have stated previously, we were in a stagnant and sliding backward state. And the things that she uncovered as she went in her first year was the fact that the staff had truly been operating in a manner that was rudderless. They didn't all go in the same direction or work for the same ends. And if you have people that are not working in the direction that you're trying to go, they're going to slow your progress down. She also found that students weren't being treated equitably, meaning that if you did not have someone advocating for you, you may not make it into a program or be allowed to take like an AP course. So she's addressed these issues. Unfortunately, with any system that's run by human beings, it's not going to be perfect. I wish the person would that is perfect. Please stand up and lead us forward.
At this time, I would say that I would support the superintendent. She has done an overhaul of the high school, and I definitely appreciate and respect that, especially being a student there and working there. She is from this area. She's dedicated to the community and the students. And what I've seen is, like I said, I've seen several different superintendents and where they've had their hands full to really drill down on improving the district, improving the resources, and being able to get that done. I have a lot of respect for that, and I appreciate that in her drive to do it. And because she's from here, I feel like that she knew out of all people what needed to be done as far as how the schools are looking, how the football field looks, and like I said, the wonderful things that are happening at that high school. So yes.
I am new to this process. You know, I learn quickly, but I will depend on the knowledge of our superintendent. I will not succeed without that input or learning process. She's done many very good things for this district that deserve recognition and praise. And if we're going to progress as we are, we're going to certainly need all her input and ideas and things that she wants to share with us. I'm looking forward to working with her. I'm looking forward to working with any of the board members that are on there, and I feel that we should be able to build consensus on any type of things that we do. We should have lots of discussions. I have nothing wrong with that, but I'm sure that we can certainly work with the superintendent, and however she wants to give us any kind of input, I certainly would support that. Thank you.
Unequivocally, yes. Not at this time, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but unequivocally, yes. She has done an incredible job of causing change to happen in our community. And that change is hard. It's hard. It's hard to be a teacher and have new standards be imposed on you. I know that. It's hard to be students and have the rules change on you. I know that. But it had to happen because it wasn't working before Dr. Walters got here. We had to change. We were failing in our schools, and the perception was legitimate that we were failing in our schools. Dr. Walters documents her points. She studies. She's bright. And I stood and talked to the former state superintendent earlier this year, who said, we know what's happening in Kankakee, and if I could get Dr. Walters away, I would in a heartbeat. And I said, don't even call, because we don't want it to happen. But yes, I support her. I think what's happening has to continue to happen. I have been on boards where we fired the CEOs. That's not a pleasant process. It destroys the stability of an organization. We have that luxury now, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Okay. As many of you know, there are 0 degrees of separation in our community. We're all connected one way or another. As a board member, you'll have many opportunities to make decisions that your family and friends will not agree with, and there will be times when you can't share the rationale for the decision. Please explain your strategy for making these tough decisions and your plan to cope with anger or frustration from our community.
Sure. So I would say that I actually have experience in that, having worked for public institutions and advocating for sometimes the underdog or underrepresented communities. And so that tends to be an uphill battle. And there are times when we can have a difference of opinion. And while we're serving at a public institution or maybe at a nonprofit, which I also have experience in, we often disagree and there could be perceptions. And so my strategy in that is to be as transparent as possible where the lines do fold for that, and also invite folks to be engaged in different things. Is it the parent council? Is it via visiting board meetings and so forth? So I do encourage participation of all community members, and I advocate for transparency wherever possible.
So my strategy would be, if there's something that I need to vote on, I would want to have an educated idea of what is it that I'm voting on, not just be on the spot, vote yes or no. I would want to look into the pros and cons and what is the best interest in the school, even if it's an unpopular idea. As long as I know that it's in the best interest of the school, that's what I would tell parents, teachers, or students, that I'm doing it for the greater good. And that's something that I know it's hard to build on in today's time and age, is trust. But I would ask them to trust me and give me time, as I have the best interest of the school in my mind.
Okay, so it's my strategy for dealing with frustration. Well, that's the time when you lean into your board team. Board members can talk to each other outside of board meetings, and when necessary, we will have extended conversations about our frustrations or about decisions that we've made or things that have happened that we're concerned about, that we can't talk to anyone else. You can't talk about personnel issues to your spouse or your children or your best friend. You have to only talk about those things to either the superintendent of schools or your board members. Those are the only people that should have that information from you as a board member. And keeping the privacy of students and staff that may be in a difficult situation is a very critical part of being a member of the Board of Education, because you are going to get private and sensitive information in closed session, and you cannot, under any circumstances, go out into the community to anyone, your spouse, your best friend, and talk about these things. So you have to lean into one another on those times.
As far as dealing with disgruntled parents, I must mention again, I did work in the discipline office for 10 years at the high school, so I dealt with that quite often, and I handled it professionally. I think I did it, I didn't have few parent complaints, and if I had to communicate anything to them, I would do it professionally and effectively. And whatever the bounds of this board is, I will definitely make sure that I stay within that rule and within that set of guidelines. But I would try to be as transparent as possible, because we also owe an explanation to our parents and our community, taxpayers. So I want to make sure that I am, operating in integrity, and I would do that as transparent as possible.
There may be lots of decisions that we may have to face that are going to be very tough. And there may be people that may be very angry about that, family members, friends, but sometimes you do have to make those tough decisions. Being a newspaper reporter, I had my share of criticisms. But you have to look, I think, the one thing is the best interest, what's in the best interest of the children. And that's where my focus is always going to be. The things that we're doing, is this going to better their education? What can we do for them? That must be the focus. And if we can do it that way, if we can succeed with that purpose, then I think that we've advanced our interest as best as we could.
My fundamental belief is every child matters. There's some we can't rescue, but every child matters. And because of that, when I have decisions to make, and I've been in the public domain for 42 years in this community, And I've been criticized. I've been criticized by the Daily Journal in its editorial page. I've been criticized by reporters. I've been criticized by public all over the place. That's okay, because if I can't handle that, I shouldn't be wherever I was. The point is, I ask a lot of questions, and I warned Dr. Walters and Mr. Grossi and and the board members that I would be there asking questions. And I do ask a lot of questions because I have to have evidence and understanding and documentation, because that's what I do in court. If I can't prove it with evidence, I'm not going to be able to defend my client or prosecute my case. That's what I do as a board member, and that's what I will do as a board member. The decisions will be made on policy. I will be able to explain those to anybody that wants to, that's complaining or disagreeing. The decisions made on personnel, I will never explain other than to say that's the evidence that's based upon the evidence that we had. Period. That's all that has to be said.
A wise gentleman said to me just last week, if you get on the board, they're going to hate you. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of know that. But that's not what this is all about. This is about making the decisions that we need to make for the better of the school district, for the better of the children, for the better of the faculty and staff. I understand that all of that is behind closed doors. There's a lot of behind closed doors meetings that are going on, and I understand that. And hopefully everyone understands that the reason why it is behind closed doors and it's not an open session is because it's really not anyone's business of how we reach the information or how we reach the decision. We came by it because we worked together as a group or a team. As far as criticism from people, I coached basketball for 22 years. I coached softball for 15 years. And if you know anything about it, you have parents. And if their kid isn't playing, there's going to be criticism.
Beth, you have the next question, and it goes to the paper.
A mission of District 111 is to celebrate the unique diversity our students possess while providing visionary educational opportunities. Please share what you consider to be unique diversity and your understanding of visionary educational opportunities.
Unique diversity to me is being able to go somewhere without being judged, whether you're disabled, your skin color is different, or just in general, you're not quote-unquote normal. As someone who is a minority, as someone that can be considered disabled, as someone that has fought off cancer at a young age, I know what it feels like to be against the odds. And diversity is something that's very beautiful, and I believe it's what our school district, what I share most about our school district, is that there is diversity and that our school board and superintendent always put that in mind and first. And that is something that I would continue to push forward towards, is fighting towards that and making sure that not one person is left behind, regardless of their skin or their race or their religious beliefs.
What I like about our school is its diversity and how when you go into the school and if you just watch our kids, they're all together. They're talking, they're laughing. They're not all segregated off based on their race or based on their social standing. You know, like all the athletes are over here, all of this group is over there. They intermingle. And I love going to our events, like our plays, our football games, our basketball games, and I just sit and I watch the people more than I actually watch the game, and watch how they laugh and talk and work with each other. But diversity is not an ends. It is just a thing that is. The ends is equity, making sure that everyone has access, and then making sure that the access that they have meets their needs. And I think that that is more in keeping of the direction that we're going. We acknowledge our diversity, and we use it to our advantage, but we make sure that people who need help getting a seat at the table get that help so that they can take their place.
Beth, could you please repeat that question?
Sure. Please share what you consider to be unique diversity and your understanding of visionary educational opportunities.
Unique diversity. I would say I am a product of biracial. I am biracial. I'm Vietnamese and African American. We were the only, I would remember, maybe one other Black and Asian family growing up here in the community. So I grew up with unique diversity all around me. I had to learn at an early age to be able to understand a grandmother that didn't speak English. I had to be able to understand those needs of people that aren't necessarily from here or homegrown from here, but I want to make them feel welcome. And that's what I do personally. As far as visionary opportunities, I would definitely encourage more increased opportunities for students to appreciate different backgrounds and different cultures, to be more accepting of as well as, as far as diversity, as far as LGBTQ, different things, different acceptances as far as what we all have to offer. So I would love to, I just feel like I embrace it, I embody it, and I want to, be able to promote unique diversity and inclusion in this district.
When you talk about unique diversity, I believe you're thinking about, or I consider children all working together. And my daughters have benefited so much from that diversity. They've learned with so many different groups of people, and they've been in plays and musicals and all types of programs, and no thoughts at all about race or anything else. Through the teachers, through the parents, everybody, and that's what I think is one of the most important things in this community. It seems like there's a lot of ability to get along with everybody, and that's something. And I think that's something that the schools definitely instill. When you have something like that here, it brings out a decency about people. And that's what I would like to see, continue. I think that there's a lot of very, very decent people, and they've all been, been beneficial for my children and for myself. I've really very, very impressed with what this community is all about. Now, for visionary educational opportunities, I just think we need to focus on the skills to make our children succeed. Whatever it's in the workplace or whether it's in the colleges, they need to have that ability to succeed.
20-some years ago, my children graduated from Kankakee High School. When we moved to Kankakee, we chose Kankakee because the schools looked like the world. They didn't look like some sanctuary somewhere, and I don't mean that in any other sense. They didn't look like a suburb on the North Shore, I'll put it that way. So we chose Kankakee for that part of that reason. My daughter gave a speech at graduation, which I'm very proud of because she was valedictorian, and in her speech she said, we may not have the best soccer team, we may not have the best football team, but we have the best world education about how to get along in the world that anybody could ever have, because that's what happens at our high school. And I couldn't have said it better than she said, and I couldn't have said it with more meaning. I think that's the critical part. One part of the critical part of diversity is it's tolerance and acceptance. And our kids, I believe, there's always exceptions, but I think our students are tolerant and accepting, and those issues that would have affected my generation have almost no effect on them. Insofar as visionary education, what we have to do is assure that each student, each child matters, that each student is competent when they walk out the doors after 12 years in our school system.
We have a diverse community, we have diverse neighborhoods, and it mirrors our high school and our whole district. That's one of the things that I would envelop every time I came into the building. The kids that are there, the diversity that's there, the communication that those kids are having between each other is something that you would not see as he said, in a regular school like across town, where they don't know what diversity is. And when those kids are actually thrown into a situation where there is diversity, they really don't know how to act. They don't understand. And I feel sorry for them, because that's not what this is all about. The education that we have, and it's not just the diversity between race and between nationality, but we're talking the special education kids. I had a PE class where I had my regular ed kids were working with the special ed kids, and they just embraced them. It was one of the most encouraging things I've ever seen. You did not know there was a separation between the two. They treated them as equals, and that's exactly what our whole district is about. Everything is equality, and I think the way it's going is just in a perfect direction.
So in education, diversity is actually split into two separate categories. The first one is cultural citizenship. Cultural citizenship means that students who have particular backgrounds can feel comfortable in who they are, and they can feel that their identity is reflected within the educational system. The second tier to that is called intercultural competence, which is what most of my peers are speaking about, the engagement of one another and embracing each other in a shared space and applauding each other within those differences. So for us to be successfully interculturally connected, services do need to be equitable. And for service to be equitable, we need to applaud the backgrounds, the experiences that our students are coming into our district with, validating that. So what I tend to see with many students that I mentor or that I serve in or outside former education spaces is that they feel that they need to hide who they are, they need to hide their abilities, they need to hide their identities. And so what I would support is, as an institution, is for us to applaud that, to let them know that it is a piece of gold that they already have. And so an example to add to your second part of the question of visionary opportunities, that is why DePaul University called me to build their LGBTQ services, to build their services for underrepresented communities and serve as an institutional liaison for undocumented students.
We are all grappling with social media these days. What if you see something in Facebook or some other social media that you feel is derogatory or untrue about the school district? Say it's a tense union dispute or the issue of fighting or something like that. How should the district respond? How should you respond to what you feel in your heart is derogatory and untrue? What is your strategy? I know this is a very new issue and we all are dealing with it and we're struggling with it. How would you handle it as a school board member, and how should the district handle it?
Is that my question?
Yes.
Well, sometimes I put my foot in it. I'll admit it. I've said things. And I've become more disciplined over time. Facebook is not the world. It is not the entire community. It is an echo chamber. And it's an echo chamber of people who agree with one another. And they actually use algorithms to make sure you all meet up on Facebook and continue to echo at each other. So we need to put down the devices and talk to each other. So that's what I really make it my business, to go out into the community and to have conversations with people about the district. I don't take the things that people put on Facebook personal or social media personal about the school district, because first of all, a lot of them aren't even from Kankakee. They don't go here, their children don't go here, they don't live here. So why would you even listen to them?
I am generally a positive person. As far as engaging on social media, I tend to, as in negative light, I tend to not do that. Unless I'm promoting positiveness, I will not address anything like that. Unless it's directed to me, then I would invite that person to talk to me directly. I just don't think that social media is a great place to air out grievances as far as, back and forth, and I will not engage in things like that. And I've managed to keep myself personally and professionally clear and, away from the negativity. I don't want to engage in it, so I will not. But I will invite anyone to have a conversation with me if that's what I need to do.
Mr. Bernard.
With social media, it's kind of like you actually can be two different people. There's the public person as a school board member, and there's the private person. If there were issues that were discussed in about the schools and things like that, I would not respond to them. What I would do is depending on what the issue is, I would talk to our school board president first and see if there's any kind of legitimacy to what they're saying. And if there isn't, then we'll just leave that alone. But if there's something there that's a concern, and then we bring it to the superintendent's attention and see if there's something that should be done. But to respond in these type of things is just a dangerous situation where you just start to escalate the problem, and it doesn't really solve anything. You're not going to solve if somebody's complaining about something, you're not going to change their mind. So unless there's really something legitimate that they have to say, that's the only time I would even address the matter, and I would never address it in social media.
First of all, there is a policy that exists in our school district about how to make public statements, and that policy is that we do it through the school board president and the superintendent. Each individual board member doesn't go off to create his own policy and his or her own response. That's number one. Number two, Facebook, and we've seen the destruction of careers on Instagram and Snapchat, destruction of students on all of those things. And if the parents don't get it and the staff don't get it and the administration does get it because they have to deal with it, if public doesn't get it, how damaging that this is a post that's going to the whole world and it stays out there forever. If they don't get it, then they face a real risk of being damaged. From the school district standpoint, there's a strategy in place and we have to deal with it. It would also be helpful, and you asked the question, I'm going to respond, but not to you specifically. It would be helpful if the newspaper and the radio station didn't rely upon social media, uncritically rely upon social media, and report what's said on social media without verification. And again, I'm not pointing at you at all. I'm just saying that happens, and it can be very damaging. So we need to check out what's true, because most of what's on Facebook is not true, and take it all with a grain of salt. But there has to be a real responsibility on parents and faculty to understand that.
Social media is going to be the death of us all, especially of communication. As it's been said, you can say one thing on a computer screen, but you would never, ever say it in front of someone's face. Before I decided to run for the board, I made comments, and I responded to things that was happening. And then when I decided to run for the board, I shut it down. I stopped responding. I stopped communicating. And I do read, but I also know that some of the things that are said are just so out of line that they don't even deserve a response. As a board member, I would never, ever respond to anyone on Facebook or whatever social media that they have. That is a no-win situation. Doesn't matter what you say, it's going to be wrong in someone's eyes. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people that live by Facebook, and they're very big critics of our district, and it's too bad that that's the only reason that they're on Facebook is because of to criticize. If they would actually go on to actually see the positive things, maybe that everything would start changing. But until that happens, nothing's going to get better.
So don't let these gray hairs fool you. I'm still considered a millennial. And so with that, while I don't engage in some of the newer social media platforms, for some of us, social media is a way of being. We cannot be without social media. And so as a board member, I would not engage in everything that I see, and I would follow the protocols as shared before. But I do think it is important that when we see something, we say something. And so if saying something means that I work through the proper channels to relate this message to the administration, then that's what I'll do. Because I also know that social media conversations are very valid for our youth, and that those things can escalate in a matter of seconds. And so I want to make sure that there is no escalation that is detrimental to our students' safety. And an example of that could be by leading a committee with students themselves, who are the go-to folks for all social media platforms and for that subculture that millennials don't even understand. So we need Zennials to be part of this conversation as well. I would validate their voice and their expertise and help them and empower them on how to move forward doing things that are going to be best for them in the future.
Do you mind repeating the question for me, please?
If you believe something is derogatory or untrue about the school district, how would you respond, and how should the district respond?
Well, as someone that works on the social media team of a multi-billion international company, the best way to combat that is not by avoiding it, but how the saying says, fight fire with fire. If somebody is criticizing our school district or putting stuff that's not true about our schools, rather than avoiding it and ignoring them, we should reach out to them. We should tell them, rather than trying to argue with them on publicly, on comments, on posts, all that, reach out to them, tell them to email us or message us privately, have a one-on-one conversation with them, and let them explain their side and us explain our side. Let them know that we're not ignoring a topic, that we're there for them, we're doing the best we can, and rather than just running away or trying to hide from it, that we're actually going to do something about it. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, before Ms. Crank posed the next question to you, I'd like to ask the candidates. We're approximately 14 minutes before our ending time. We have an array of questions here with some very pertinent topics. I would like to ask, would either one of you all have problems if we would go another additional 5 or 10 minutes? All right, thank you. Ms. Crank, you have the next question, the question to Ms. Williams.
And my question comes from the audience. The city of Kankakee has proposed 2 new TIF districts. They seem to deliberately exclude school properties. How will these TIFs affect the school district's finances in the future?
I would have to do some more research on that to answer that question effectively. So I'm not familiar with that just yet, but I would have to do that before I could answer.
Mr. Bernard.
Tax increment financing districts have been used as a way to try to generate business and growth for years. In some cases it works. In some cases we find companies and stores and things like that take their money, and then when it's the 25 years is up, they decide it's time to close. So there really is a situation where we are hurting the school districts by taking that revenue away. We need to try to generate as much revenue as possible, because there's so many different expenses and spending that the district has to do. And if we don't have that kind of money available, then what happens? I mean, then we have to change things, cut programs, things like that really you don't want to do. And yes, it does help with business development, but we have seen the unfortunate situation where it hasn't really helped in so many cases. So I think the thing is that if we're going to do this, I think it has to be something where it's going to be a significant development and something that's going to be a lot longer than just maybe a 20 or 25-year deal.
There is absolutely no reason been given to start a TIF district now. There is no project, no developer, no proposed building, no proposed anything to start a TIF district now. So just from a practical standpoint, if we start it now and let it run for 3, 5, 7 years before you have a project, you've effectively lost 7 of the 22 years that a TIF district exists. When you got a project, it's time then to look at it, but we don't have one. That's the first issue. The second issue is that effectively that's capping the assessed valuation for the school district for the length of the TIF district in that area. So all of the money that would come to the school district and the park district and the KCC goes into a fund, and that's to be used for economic development. And again, I'm all for economic development, but I'm not for screwing over the other taxing bodies simply to create a TIF district. The third issue is the city of Kankakee in the past 2 years has decided it's going to raid the TIF funds. And it's going to take the money that would have come to the park district and the school district and use that to balance its own budget when we can't balance ours with that money. So I'm adamantly opposed to doing it until there's a project. Once we have a project, then we ought to talk about it to see what the benefit's going to be.
I don't know very much about this at all. I do know that if the city is denying us the TIF money or the properties, there is an agenda. And I would like to look into that a lot deeper just to see just where all of this information is coming from.
So I believe there's a live lesson learned going on right now with TIF funds, right? And so a lesson learned in the controversy of our expansion in downtown is to ensure that all voices are at the table. And so my perspective is to ensure that the school district is at the table. And if it's not, what can we as community leaders and as representatives of the parents and the members of our community, what can we do to ensure that the school district and the school board and the parents and the educators are part of that conversation and or represented at that conversation?
May you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The city of Kankakee has proposed 2 new TIF districts. They seem to deliberately exclude school properties. How will these TIFs affect the school district's finances in the future?
Well, this is something that I'm not too knowledgeable on, and I will have to do my research as well to get a more educated response. But as of right now, based on the little research I have done, we really can't depend on the city knowing, well, according to some people, that they're doing their own thing, they have their own agenda. We need to focus on the future of our kids, and if that means taking legal matters or trying to find other ways to get revenue, money, bring in income, then we have to find those ways. We cannot just depend on the sole dependency of a city. We have to find other ways.
I don't know if you all understand, 17% of our budget comes from local taxes, the property taxes. So that would be very detrimental for the schools, for any amount to be taken away from those dollars and redirected in another direction. And I have to agree with candidate Boland, where he said there's no project on the table. There's no project that's been proposed. There's no developer that's been identified. So to take tax dollars, and these are not the city's dollars, these are your dollars. You go pay your tax bill on your property twice a year and take that money out of your checking account, your savings account, and give it to the taxing body to take care of your civic duty. And so it's unfair to the district. One, to be drawn out of the TIF, because what happens when the TIF closes, if there's money left, the district can ask for their share of that money to do work in our buildings and to continue to improve our schools. So if we're deliberately drawn out of the TIF, that means when the TIF closes, that money does not come back to the district. It does not come back to serve you, the taxpayer, in the way that you were taxed for it, for education?
In the sake of trying to get some of the subject matters answered tonight from the question from the audience, again, being District 111 is the flagship of our school districts in the county. We want to touch on that Mr. Barnard is going to be a twofold question dealing with competence-based education, how it effectively compare with exposing children to a high level. Experts say that children are very far behind in education and the direction of preparing them to compete in the world. If you agree, what do you see as a must to make sure we can compete in the world as a nation by preparing our kids?
It's kind of a two-pronged thing, actually.
Yes, sir. I have a series of them, and I just think there's some different questions that are quite important as relates to the 3 or 4 individuals that are going to be elected on April 2nd. It is very important that the voters should be aware of your position.
I think the thing is that we have to look at the skill levels that we must achieve for these students, from writing to reading to math, all those type of things that they need to have these skills if we're going to succeed in this area. Businesses look at this area for development. And if they see a workforce that is not capable of doing the type of have the type of skills that they need, they'll look past us. And that's been an unfortunate situation. The thing with the competency-based education is it's a new concept that's going on. And does it work? We're going to find out. We'll see when those scores start to come out and see if we've actually seen the real benefits. The other thing is that I think that we need to really focus on here is vocational education. We need to have the skills. There's many types of jobs out there that are available for, in terms of apprenticeships and things like that, welders, any type of skill levels that are out there, green industries that are certainly crying for those type of positions. We need to kind of find those type of jobs for those types of programs to get students prepared for those types of jobs that will be available.
Mr. Bowler?
When I came on the board, that was my introduction to competency-based education. And I sat and listened to the group that started it from Pennsylvania give a speech and talk about it and explain it. There is no question in my mind that it is a direction that can establish and can assure that our students and each student has achieved the levels of competency they need for the vocation or the further education that they want. And to accommodate that, the school district has involved CSL Behring, it's involved Nucor, it's involved industries throughout the county to say, what is it you want from students? What do you want them to do? You know what they say? We want them to have a work ethic. Are they competent at doing their job and showing up on time? We want a work ethic. So there is a competency level on work ethic. All of those things seem sort of mundane, but as Dr. Walters pointed out recently when she was speaking to the Chamber of Commerce, this is not the business of rote memorization anymore that got me through school, that I could memorize, regurgitate on the test, and then walk out and forget it all. We don't need that because we all have cell phones that are computers. But we do need to know how to shake a hand of the person that's going to employ you, how to show up on time, how to do those things, and we need to know how to write, and to prove that we know how to write. Not get a C in writing, but get a competency level that assures that you know what you're doing. So I think it's critical, and I think that will solve the second part of the problem also.
I'm interested to see just where the test scores or whatever, however we're going to determine just where they stand with this, with the CBE, with the competency-based education. I'm understanding it's starting with the freshmen next year. They'll incorporate the new incoming freshmen until it's all grandfathered in, so everyone is doing the competency-based education. I'm hoping that, from the students that I've talked to, I know that they are embracing it. They are enjoying the fact that it kind of gives them a little bit of individuality as they're going on. but they do need to be prepared for the workforce. To see kids not even know how to make change and how to even run a cash register without, or make change without a cash register is confusing. The competency-based education, the teachers are embracing it. They are working hard to make sure that the students are on board with it, and it is something that is a wave of the future. And I would love to see that we are going to be ones that are going to be able to be the most successful school that is encompassing this.
So I support competency-based education because we can only move forward from failed national platforms like No Child Left Behind, which was detrimental for all students, really. So I believe competency-based education is a best practice that has been implemented in different spaces, and I applaud our institution and our school district for having the courage to bring those new ideas into the Kankakee District, because it takes a lot to even do that, right? And then two, I would support it because it would allow students to really feel more like they have an opportunity to engage more directly. And often students feel that they don't see the application of what they're learning in the classroom. And so this would be an opportunity for them to be fully engaged in education and also give them an opportunity to be better equipped to go into the workforce. So one thing that I can do as well is to support educators and teachers and staff and parents in making sure that we are all on board in knowing how this movement is going to move forward and be part of that moving forward with us as well.
So with this being something new, it can be very confusing for parents as well as for students. I've spoken to students who have said that they don't understand how it works or why it's happening. But doing my research, I've seen that it has so many benefits to it, and I would strongly support it, as I believe that not only just sitting there and listening to a teacher teach, but as well as being hands-on and also providing job skills, work ethics, things we can provide for students, that because we all know that not everyone is college ready or going to go college bound. So it's nice to know that they'll have something to fall on when it comes to finding a job. And if we can provide them with a boost, then I support it.
Yes, I support competency-based education wholeheartedly. This is an opportunity for students, no matter what their level is, when they come into a classroom, to begin to move forward, and for teachers to differentiate the teaching and really work on the needs of that student and help them, and let students who can work at a faster pace go off and work by themselves and not be stuck sitting there listening to a lecture of something that they already know. I remember when my son was in kindergarten, he came home after one day of school and he said, "Do I have to go back?" Because they were teaching him things that he already knew, and he was interested in learning something different. So we had a report back from one of our teachers out of competency-based education. They went and they presented at a event in I forget what city, but it was a group of competency-based educators reporting back on what they had learned and teaching other people about the program. And this teacher, the year that Dr. Walters started, she was on burnout. She was totally burnt out. And to see her that evening explaining how her class worked, explaining how students who maybe can't read at grade level are gathered together and worked in a setting where they can get that material, it is just what we need. And our students, while they are finding it challenging, they are really finding the opportunities in it also.
I would have to agree as far as I agree with competency-based education. I believe that working with the businesses, as someone had mentioned, seeing what the needs are as far as what are preparing our students for these roles. I would just like to see the data behind it and track it and make sure that we are implementing it in the best possible way. I would think that the students would be able to focus on more soft skills and social skills, things like that, and communication techniques, because I know that that's something that we're lacking. So I do agree with the competency-based education. I just want to make sure that we are implementing it in a way that everyone, all the stakeholders, feel comfortable and confident in what we're doing and understand what we're doing.
Mr. Gianni, you have the next question, David, and the questions to Mr. Boland.
Thank you. If you could go to Springfield and ask for one thing from our legislators that would help our schools, what would that one thing be? So if there's one thing you could ask for from Springfield and get to help the schools, what would that be? And more money might be the obvious answer, but
Are you talking about help Kankakee schools, or are you
help
talking
schools.
about
It can be help schools statewide, but
Statewide.
something legislatively that could change that helps schools.
Well, obviously, I mean, the obvious answer is they need to fully fund the formula. We receive 60% or some, my mind's just kind of blank, but over 60% of our revenue is from the state aid formula. They've changed the state aid formula, and it's a much better formula than it was before because and they call it the evidence-based formula, and it's based upon student growth as a major factor in the calculation, plus the availability of real estate taxes in the district. So I would say they made a commitment to fully fund it. They haven't yet, and I understand they are short of money also, but education should be their priority. They're supposed to provide 51% of all education funds in the state. The other thing I think I would ask is for them to institutionalize the idea of each child matters and institutionalize trauma-influenced responses to children's needs and institutionalize the competency-based education. Because I think if you start that process, it becomes more accepted. There are more resources available in terms of materials and money. So those are the two things I would ask for, and you asked for one, but I gave you two.
I know that the state doesn't have any money, or so they say they don't have any money. I would like to go down there and ask them if there is any kind of way that they can bring up money, especially for our district, to help us with our security, with our safety. That's a big controversy right now, and I know that we have money coming to us, hopefully, but I would like to see that the state would help us out in something like that, because this is what our community is, and we do not want to continuously look over our shoulders and wonder what's going to happen when we walk into our building. And if the state can give us money to help us with the safety features, with the security, I understand that it's all kind of based in together as far as education, but if they can single that part out with the technology and use the technology also, but I would definitely like to see the safety and the security issues of our buildings, not just one building, but all of our buildings in the district.
So first of all, thank you to everyone who is still here with us. I see some folks doing this, so I'm about to say, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. So thank you all. To answer the question, yes, obviously we would ask for additional funding. My proposal, I think, would be to restructure the funding percentages that are coming directly from our property taxes, because if we continue with that, then our district, if and when, or currently, when we have home values that are less than other spaces within our state, then we know we have less resources we're putting into our district. And so that means that the most needed school districts have the least resources. And so that would be more of my policy strategy. Of course, how would we implement that additional support would be to institutionalize, as others have mentioned in agreement, anti-violence programs, mental health child support and cultural citizenship, as I mentioned earlier.
So, realistically speaking, in today's world, money is the key to everything. Money is what opens many opportunities and many doors. So, if I can go down to Springfield and ask for one thing, that would be, again, for money, a grant, something where we can provide it to our teachers, because teachers are the key to our students' future. They are the ones that battle. They are the ones that argue with the students. They're the ones that educate the students. They at times know the students more than the parents themselves. And it's really sad that I have witnessed teachers having to get a second job in order to pay their bills, that they have to use their own money to buy school supplies for the students. I've witnessed teachers buy notebooks and pencils for the first day of school because they know students can't afford it. So it would be nice to give those teachers a break and give them that fund that they need, that support that they need, and let them know that they're not alone.
Since you said one thing, I'm going to stick with that thing, and it's give the districts the money that you promised them. Even if they didn't raise the amount that they gave us, if they just gave us what they promised at the beginning of the funding year, we would be able to look at our budget and say, okay, these things we know we can do. But because we get prorations of the allocation, we may get 81% as opposed to getting 100%. And so therefore, we have to automatically plan our budget as if we're not going to get what they promised us. The other thing is, in order for that to really take place, it behooves you all as taxpayers and as citizens to help us stand up for our district. I mean, how many of you, and I want you to just raise your hand, have called your legislator about education in your community? Just raise your hand. Have called them and told them they need more money, they need this or that. I mean, if you're not talking to them, there's only two things that they listen to: people who donate to their campaigns and people who call them on the phone. And they'll only listen to phone calls if they're getting several thousand.
I would also have to agree with some of my counterparts as far as monies towards mental health programs and things like that. I feel like our students could benefit from these extra resources that we need. They face a totally different generation than we did growing up, and I feel like they have a list of different issues that they have to combat on a daily basis. So I think that these funds with mental health issues, as Patricia had mentioned, as well as anti-bullying and different things like that, are the additional programs that we could fund to help our students succeed. So I would think that we would need more funds for those programs.
Yeah, at the same time that they push these unfunded mandates on us in the state, they also, are not providing the type of money that they're supposed to. The state constitution, as Mr. Boland pointed out, is supposed to provide 51% of the money for education. And I think the percent now is around 29%. What happened with all the money that went for gambling? I mean, as you see, there's gambling going all over now, and the idea was that was supposed to provide a good amount of money to help in terms of education, and it hasn't. They figured out a way to budget that, to put that budget that in there and say, oh, we're going to have so much for education now based on what the anticipated revenue would be for gambling. And so they do not have to use or fund that state money as they wanted to. So that's one of the concerns I would have, is the connection between unfunded mandates and how we're not getting the proper amount of money that we should for education.
We will have the last question before we get to our closing statement. Mrs. Anderson, you have the last question, and the question to Ms. Johnston.
School finance is definitely challenging, and understanding the school budget is difficult for many community members. And as you know, many people are asking, how can we afford turf but not school supplies or other activities and things that our students need? So how are you going to help the community understand spending of taxpayer dollars?
The little that I know of the spending of when in the district, I know that there are specific funds for specific things. You have an athletic fund. You have a teachers fund for their salaries. You have a building fund. All of those are together, and the public just needs to be aware of that. And yeah, it was hard to explain, why do you have that football field? What's the big deal? It's a different fund. It came from a different money that we have, and that's why we were able to get it. It's not the same money that goes into putting air conditioning in the building, or buying books for the kids, or buying electronics, computers for the kids. It's a whole different fund. And we've got to stick by those specific guidelines that are set up in our bylaws, that we should not dip into other funds that the district has in order to put them to work in some other part of the building. So we have to just make sure that the public understands that.
So one way just to continue the conversation, if I may, one way that I would encourage or promote information to our constituency is to be, again, as my platform is, to be transparent where possible. And so one way of providing transparency is by providing more information on how budgets work to perhaps parent councils and different sub-organizations within our school district. So how do grants work? So that's something I have experience in. We can use a template and say, these are called line items. And so within each line item, we have a certain amount of monies allocated. And as a public institution, we need to account for each penny, and this is how things work. So that if folks have a disagreement to that, then we can empower them on how to voice those concerns and how to be engaged in the decision making where possible. Some other thing we can other examples of what we can do to encourage transparency and advocacy is to explain with grants. Grants have deliverables. So what does that mean? That means that as we write a grant, this and this and this is promised so that we can receive these monies. So how do we deliver on that? Or how can we be part of writing that grant proposal to make sure that everything we wish for is included in that?
So I'll be honest, I used to be one of those critics of wondering why the money was being spent on a football field, or why the money was being built on remodeling the school building rather than putting it towards education, towards books, towards teachers, until I started doing my own research, started seeing that it was through grants, it was through certain guidelines that we have to follow, and not all money you're able to spend all types of money on whatever you would like. So if somebody comes up to me and brings a question like that to me, I'll explain it to them. I'll let them know. I'll show them my research. I'll let them know why it's being done the way it's being done. But not just that. I'll also give them an answer to their concern. If they're concerned that money's going towards a football field but not towards education, I'll give them ideas I have, of fundraising ideas. Maybe we couldn't get a grant for education, but we'll start a fundraising where we partner up with a corporation that can donate money to us to provide books for our kids, provide a solution for them if needed.
Okay, I can tell you what we have done. The school's budget is online. You can look at it. There's a public comment period where you can comment upon what we're spending in the school budget. We have unveiled and talked about our budget issues in parent council meetings. Dr. Walters has made multiple presentations, not only to the board, but to the community about how we spend our money. And our administration makes certain that the board understands what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing and why they want us to vote in favor of it. When we redid the high school, that money had been available to this community since 2009, but we did not have an administration in place that knew how to leverage that grant, to apply for it, to prepare for it, to plan for it. And we have turned all of that around and put an administration in place that knows how to spend wisely every penny that we get our hands on.
When it comes to special funds being allocated, I would just try to be transparent with the parents again and educate them. And if they don't know, just provide more resources for them to understand. If it's enough of parents that are raising the issue, then I would try to have a parent meeting. I would try to, or at least construct a document so they understand how funds are allocated, why certain things are being done before others. So that is my answer and solution, is to educate the parents and be transparent with them as far as how the process works.
Thank you. I'd just like to, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have a few more to go.
Thank you, Jesse.
I think the thing is that with the grants, of course, you do have to follow the guidelines of the grants, and whatever that was pursued, you certainly would want to continue to complete that project. But, you know, as I was a reporter, I also saw a lot of questionable spending by various school districts, different things they did, and that's certainly one of the things I would look at. You know, do we need to spend $60,000 a year on a lobbyist? Are we spending too much on consultants? These are some of the questions that I think you would have to address as a school board member. Maybe those answers are there, and they are perfectly legitimate reasons to spend the money. But these are questions that I feel that are ones that we should consider when we're looking at trying, on our budget spending.
All right, let me be honest with you. There are two people who understand the budget in our school district, and that's the business manager, or the vice assistant superintendent for business, and Dr. Walters. The rest of us find out by asking questions and saying, how can we do this? How do you justify hiring these two people? And that's been what I've tried to do since I've been on the board, and I know it happened before I got there. You ask questions nonstop, and you want to watch eyes glaze over, board members, public, anybody else, when you start showing the budget, because you got to talk about the education fund, the transportation fund, the tort fund, the audit fund. It goes on forever and ever. And I was pretty familiar with budgets. I worked on them in the city, and the city's budget is a piece of cake by comparison to the school district budget. It's very simple. But not the school district budget is not so much. But what you do the only way you can educate is ask questions. And sometimes it's a simple answer. That loan that funded the high school and that funded the track and the football field, that was a loan from the federal government that was for the shovel-ready projects. And that's the only thing it could be spent on, was shovel-ready projects. A book is not a shovel-ready project. There's no way you can make it in there. A teacher's salary is not a shovel-ready project. But that's why why we took the loan, was because we needed all the capital improvements too. But it's not easy stuff, and I don't understand all the ins and outs of the budget, but I sure as heck, and I credit my other board members, we all ask a lot of questions. And I'll stop.
And again, I'd like to thank all our candidates, our panel, and surely I'd like to thank those individuals who attended and providing the different questions, such as organizational structure, maintaining the difference between the role of a board member, the role of a superintendent, and others. The most recent incident at the high school and the junior high relating to the safety of our students. Again, organizational structure, and the environment, and how board have the input in the day-to-day operation. So those is an array of questions, and individuals need to go out and vote on Tuesday, April 2nd. And we're going to have our closing 2-minute, starting with you, Patricia.
So thank you again, our public library, our NAACP local chapter, and my colleagues up here, all of you who are here till past some of our bedtimes. Thank you very much for your attention, for your active participation. Patricia Santoyo Marin is here humbly asking for your support so that we can continue to advocate together for the success of all of our students. If you notice, we have an increased diversity in candidates, so I'm very happy to see that, and I hope that you can also applaud that in your vote as well. I've shared a little bit of why I'm running. I feel a sense of responsibility to support the public education system for all students. I have experience in advocacy for all students, and I want to make sure that Kankakee is a place where all students can thrive, for all students to feel that they are valuable, that we can add to that we can support the best practices that are being implemented, advocate for all of our students, empower the teachers as well, and make sure that we're transparent and equitable in everything we lead and that we do together. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for everyone for coming and listening to me. And also a big thank you for the NAACP for organizing this and inviting me as well. I think we all know Kankakee as a city and as a school district is going through tough times right now. And it is time that we tackle these issues, from the spike in school violence that includes fights and stabbings to the low test scores compared to the local school district, to other local school districts. Letting teachers and staff members that they're letting them know and reminding them they are not alone and that they will have the full support that they need. Letting parents know that these issues and concerns are being addressed, and letting students know that we're doing it for their future, for their best interests. Kankakee, please allow for a new generation with fresh ideas to take charge. Allow me to be the change we need and the voice we deserve by voting for me on April 2nd. Thank you.
I want to thank the Kankakee branch of the NAACP and Kankakee Public Library for holding this forum. This is an opportunity for voters to get a chance to get a feel for your candidates that are running for local office. And this is the most important part of being a citizen, is casting a ballot for the person who will represent you in a board or on a council. We have made a lot of progress as a school district, and I want to stay on Kankakee School District 111 Board of Education to continue to help push this district forward. We are at a tipping point, and when you get to the tipping point, first of all, you're at like the top of the mountain. So that's where backsliding becomes easy, because the pull is there. People don't always want to invest in change. They're very invested in having things be the way that they're used to them being. And so we're asking a lot of our staff, we're asking a lot of our students, we're taking them out of their comfort zone, and we're shining a light. And people are looking at Kankakee. And as my fellow board member, Chris Boland, said, the state knows about the good things that we are doing, and they are very interested and very proud. The administration that we have is professional. They went down to Springfield. We weren't on the competency-based education model. We had to fight to get there, and we had the professionals on board who could go toe-to-toe with anybody who would say that we didn't deserve this opportunity and explain why we did. And we had the administrators in place to do that. So I would appreciate your vote before April 2nd, because early voting is going on now. April 2nd is the last day to vote.
I would like to say that I want to thank the NAACP, Kankakee Public Library, and you all for participating, as well as my colleagues here at the table. Kankakee families deserve school board members that will operate with the utmost integrity with respect to how we manage district resources, leadership and staff, and most importantly, how we engage with our students. Our school board, our leadership, and our teachers must be held accountable, as well as parents. We must identify the practices that are working in our schools and in the ones that don't, and hold folks accountable for the decisions that they make. Every student from every family should be able to get the resources they need to make their students successful. This means every family will need different kinds of support. I've worked in the schools. I know what our students need, and as a school board member, I will work to make sure we're placing our resources in the right places. Thank you.
Mr. Bernard.
First of all, I want to thank the NAACP for conducting this forum. This will be the only public opportunity for the people to hear a discussion about issues in our school district. However, we must also realize that only 10 to 15% of the voters in this district will cast ballots in this election. And this is for a district that makes up 60 to 70% of your tax bill. I want to emphasize that safety, teacher retention, and student success are my three most important issues. We need to make sure more than anything else that our children and all of our staff feel safe in our schools. We should listen to the suggestions of teachers who experience firsthand what goes on in the classrooms and halls. If we need to institute tougher penalties for fighting and bringing weapons, then those choices must be made. The second issue is improving teacher retention. About 10% more of our skilled, well-trained teachers are leaving each year compared to the state average. We need to study as to why we can't keep our teachers and make every effort possible to attract and retain certified educators. Teacher retention maintains a strong, stable community. For some people, or for some children, seeing the same teachers every year may be the only stable thing in their lives. We cannot afford to continue losing teachers because it hurts our community year after year. It seems that in this district there is a state of denial. We must address the serious issues of excessive spending as a way just to improve our image. For example, the $60,000 a year lobbyist. We must ask ourselves why our students graduate at a rate of more than 90%, yet many of them have the difficulty of writing grammatically correct sentences. We also need to ask ourselves, are discipline referrals taken seriously, or are they just mere papers that collect on a student? We have to be truthful to our students, our teachers, our staff, and our taxpayers, because if we don't, we will face severe consequences. But if elected, I intend to work with everyone else on the board in order to build a consensus. I hope you will give me a chance. Thank you.
When I came onto the board, there were lots of folks that said, that's a mistake. I think what I have brought to the board is I have asked questions. I have brought us some humor on occasion to the board, and I pushed the administration to make some decisions that they might not have otherwise made. But I've also brought a degree of honesty and the board has a great deal of honesty. We exchange differences of opinions on an ongoing basis. But when it's said and done, and when the vote comes, we have acted as a unified board, and I think that's a critical thing that's happened. So I'm proud of the limited time I've had on the board, and I want 4 more years. I'm passionate. I care about this school district. I care about each student in the school district, from my granddaughter in the 1st grade to the students who are graduating from high school. It is critical that we look at each child because each child matters. It's critical that we assure that as each child graduates, they are competent. So my position is very simple. Very simple. I want to assure that each child is able to go into the world as a competent human being and able to make a living or pursue their education. Very simple task. And along the way, we have to make schools safe, absolutely. And I want to compliment, I think we have a tremendous teaching staff. And I look to you, Ms. Anderson. But I think we have a tremendous teaching staff, and I've seen what the freshman staff did on their own time over the summer creating a program that we didn't have. And I know that creativity is there from the preschool all the way to the 12th grade. And I'm very proud of our students, and I'm very proud of our staff. The one thing I do want, I don't want 7 national or Illinois State scholars next year. I want 57, because the kids that are in our school are capable of doing that. Thanks.
First of all, thank you to the NAACP for hosting this. It's a humbling experience, I will admit. I had no idea what to expect when I came in here, but as I said, it's humbling. I appreciate everyone coming and out to listen to this. As I said, there's not a lot of opportunity for you to hear us. You can read information on Facebook. It's not the same. I feel that what I want to do, if I'm elected to this board, is to continue the strong programs that we have initiated already in the district. I want the staff to know, I want the staff to understand that we're on their side, that they're not fighting against us, they're not fighting against administration. We have had an awful lot of people leave our district throughout the years. It's been sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 a year. Consistency in the classroom is important. The students get used to the teachers, and then when they're gone, then they have to relearn. The same thing with our administrators. We have had a revolving door with our administrators, especially at the high school. There was a time where I don't know if we had the same administrative staff. It must have been like 16 or 17 years in a row because it was a revolving door. Consistency breeds success. And in order for the staff to be successful, the students to be successful, there must be consistency with the people leading the building. The reason why our district is stronger right now is because Dr. Walters has been here and she's been consistent. The kids, the students, they need to know that we're on their side also, not just the faculty. The students need to know that they have issues. They should feel free to come and talk to us. We have to have an open door with them. If they have issues, if they have problems, we need to be able to open up to them and let them know that they can be heard, and we will help them with whatever problems they have. I just feel that this district is going in a really strong direction, and I would like to be a part of that voting on April 2nd. If you're old time, I always voted on the actual day. If you want to take the new way of doing it, obviously vote early and often.
Again, thank you. Thank for the candidates, the panel, and thank the audience. Thank you.